New Mexico's population centers, Las Cruces, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, all have status as at least immigrant-friendly and some as actual sanctuary cities. Now, has that put a target on their backs for federal government enforcement agencies? The Santa Fe Reporter's Catherine Lewin asked that question last week, noting that the state's two Democratic senators are asking for arrest data to better track what the somewhat secret movements of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known as ICE, of course. That's where we start with the Line Opinion Panel. Each of our four guests signed up to research this week's topics and offer their informed opinions. First up, we welcome to the Line table former New Mexico House Minority Whip Daniel Foley. We're also joined by Christine Sierra, author and former UNM political science professor. Welcome back after a while. Julianne Grimm's here. She's editor and publisher of the Santa Fe Reporter. And we welcome former state senator and another Line regular Diane Snyder to the table. Thank you all for being here. Julianne, ICE told your newspaper it doesn't track arrest data by county. So how are you finding out what these enforcement actions are about, the actual numbers?
We can't find out the actual numbers, not yet. It's very difficult. I think you're referring to, we reported in this story just earlier in the week that we had two members of Congress saying, we know there have been upticks in ICE activity in New Mexico, in Albuquerque. And so we wanted to look into that a little bit. And we referred to some previous research we did where we had asked ICE to give us a list of people who had been snatched up and taken off the streets in Santa Fe and put through the deportation process. And ICE's response was, well, no one's actually removed from your county. They're actually removed from the court in El Paso, and so we can't provide you the information the way that you've asked for it. So we're really curious if, they're going to be able to provide Congress, or at least two members of Congress, with the information they asked for.
That's right.
But really, when it comes to the phrase that you talked about, whether you say immigrant-friendly or whether you talk about sanctuary city, that's a shorthand in our state for jurisdictions that don't cooperate with the federal government, meaning that they don't welcome, in the schools or in the institutions that are run by the city or the county government, for example. But that doesn't keep the federal government from looking at public documents that you or I could look at to find information that help the agents target people that they want to target. And so our immigrant right activists in Santa Fe said, don't sleep on this idea that we are sanctuary and everything's okay. We have to stand up for our neighbors if that's what we believe. And ICE is still alive and well and serving warrants and trying to get, people in custody.
That's right. The senators that we just referred to, Senators Heinrich and Udall, sent a letter to the acting director, and interesting points they make that they're getting information that folks are using these quasi-warrant type things. We have to be careful here because these are administrative orders, not judicial orders. That's a clear difference. They're not warrants. And so folks are confused about who they can let into their homes, who they can let into their businesses. They're playing a little game here that's it's tough to track down, isn't it?
Well, it's to ICE interests to be successful in who they target and being able to deport them. But yes, there is legally a difference between an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant, and regardless of whether the local law enforcement does not want to cooperate for various reasons, to insist on serving the larger public interest in terms of public safety, that they would have to honor judicial warrants. But that people have to honor judicial warrants. The spillover effect is what is also creating a lot of mobilization on the part of immigrant rights groups, in that you might target somebody who is a criminal alien in our midst, undocumented, and get them ready for deportation, go after them. But ICE is also, we get reports from this from on-the-ground immigrant groups here in Albuquerque and the Dreamers in Santa Fe, that it's what, the collateral spillover effect, that if people are in the household or nearby or whatever, they will also inquire and pick them up. But I want to just take just a quick moment to talk about how we've been here before. And one of the issues is the priority of enforcement. What areas do you want to engage in aggressive enforcement and deportation orders, removal orders? In the 1990s, the Border Patrol entered the Lourdes Gonzalez elementary premises and wanted to pick up, with the mother in tow, to pick up 2 of her kids, take them all, which they did, and then put them on the bus to Ciudad Juarez, saying that they were illegal and they had to deport them. The principal of Dolores Gonzalez at first objected to the Border Patrol coming onto those premises. The Border Patrol just went over her.
Wow.
What she did is she called the news media, and it became a big old story. Senators Domenici and Bingaman were furious about this happening on an elementary school premises. And so they insisted that INS at the time meet with community people and figure out a way, as our current senators say, a way forward. So an INS Community Relations Board was set up. It included members of the community, INS, and the senators' staffers, and eventually Congressman Schiff's staffer to give it some weight. I was on that board, and we had monthly meetings with INS to discuss immigrant rights groups, Catholic Charities, a bunch of people, service organizations, and so on. And INS came. And out of that, Gene, there was a memo from the El Paso district to INS will not engage in enforcement activities in schools, public places, religious congregations and synagogues, and so on. So we have been there. I would urge the senators and the community people to readdress that time when we could have bipartisan buy-in to having some kind of a forum to air our grievances.
I love that. It's a good story. Interesting times. We're down to about 3 minutes. I'm going to split it between you guys. The idea that in the letter from the senators that ICE enforcement officers are also wearing, quoting here, wearing deceptive uniforms to appear as local police when they knock on doors. You know, that just seems like they're taking these extra steps that it just is a little bit beyond here. How does that strike you in your gut? I'm curious.
One, I was kind of surprised. I would have thought that their uniform was serious enough, because if you're an illegal immigrant or being investigated, you already have enough fear in you that anything in a uniform, I believe,
Fair point.
would upset you or get your attention. I'm a little concerned about. I know that ICE is trying to do their job. They're trying to do what their superiors are telling them to do. Are they being a little over exuberant in doing it? I don't know. But I do believe that the senators, our senators, have called for a meeting similar to what you were talking about. And the things you just listed, that sounds like a reasonable way to deal with it. And I think they should, instead of making it all new, go back and pull that agreement and look at it. But let's not make these ICE agents the evil guys. They're doing their job. And they are required to do.
But is it more about the how than?
Yes, but
Okay.
that's what I'm saying is, are they stepping over the line?
Gotcha.
Or are they just, or is that what they're being encouraged at a higher level
That's
to
a good
do?
point there, yeah.
So, but we need to make sure that, because they are part of our community.
That's right. Your thoughts on this? Interesting. They are doing their job, but
I mean,
it's,
it's way too many thoughts to get out in a minute and a half. I'll just say this.
Yeah.
They're doing, if the U.S. senators don't like what they're doing, change the law. One of the problems is the problem we have with this whole immigration issue is Congress fails to act on changing the law. Right. And so change it one way or the other. Do something other than making it a partisan deal. At the end of the day, these guys are out doing what they've been hired to do, which is enforce immigration, customization laws. The ICE folks are. I'm not sure, showing up in a different uniform. I mean, cops go out all the time in sting operations. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I know that sometimes people are told this is what's going on, and when the investigation happens, it's not really the way it goes out or really the way it comes. But at the end of the day, look, we know that both of these two U.S. senators are adamantly opposed to the immigration stuff that's going on. We know that they're not in favor of doing the stuff that ICE is out there doing, and we know that they're not really in favor of addressing the immigration law issue that's creating this backlog problem. And so until we do that, to me, I think it's all just kind of, which I think is the difference between Senator Domenici and Senator Bingaman and the two senators we got now. Both of those guys saw an issue, sat down bipartisanly, talked about figuring out a way to do it, and they addressed
Well,
it.
that ship has sailed, though. With this current administration, that's no one's
Well,
sitting down with
I
anybody.
think the
for,
ship
you
sailed
know.
before this administration. To say that this has become a partisan country since the president's been elected, I think you had to have had your head in the sand the last 10, 15 years.
Interesting points there. We're going to take a break with The Line. We'll get an update on coronavirus preparations next. When this group returns, we're talking about Republican efforts to grow numbers in southeast corner of our state.